MindsEye's release was such a disaster that Sony started issuing refunds faster than players could uninstall it. It didn't launch, it tripped, face-planted, and caught fire before hitting the store page. But on this channel we're here to learn, and because behind every train wreck there is a blueprint of what not to do, MindsEye is a goldmine. It's not just the bugs or the performance. This game failed on a fundamental level. Its game design was broken from the ground up. So today, we're breaking down exactly how MindsEye collapsed, from shallow systems to misguided ambition, and what every dev and every player can take away from the wreckage. As a game developer, I wanted to give MindsEye a chance to see what all the fuss is about. I refrained myself from watching any video on it. All I knew was that the Steam reviews were mixed at the time, and from what I could gather, the general sentiment was bad. I wanted to go in with understanding, an open mind like a nurturing and loving parent, only to despair and put it up for adoption at the end. The journey was worse than I expected. But still, what can we learn in terms of game design, what went wrong, and what can we avoid in our own projects? To be clear, we're not covering bugs and technical issues. It's not like the game designer went, "Oh, Bob, can you make that car blow up without reason? I'm sure it will be a great experience." While there are plenty of bugs and other things to talk about, I'm going to focus strictly on the decisions made, and more horrifyingly, approved by someone to stay in the final game. This video is my personal opinion, and parts are exaggerated for comedic effect. I have no personal connection with the game designers or developers who created this game. I'm sure they did everything they could. Some parts are serious, some parts are pamphlets. Do not take me seriously except for when we learn something useful in the real world. Also, please subscribe, it's very hard to talk this fast. Joking, I used a speed modifier. Game design isn't just about coming up with cool ideas or deciding where to place enemies on a map. It's the blueprint for the entire player experience. And this is very important to remember. It deals with player experience, not level design, not code, not graphics, not writing. It's about how all those things come together to create what the player actually feels while playing. From defining the core loop, to shaping mechanics and systems, to balancing challenge and reward, so it all just feels right when you play. There are some nuances, of course, like level and narrative designers do collaborate closely with a game designer to make the whole package feel great. And that there are some people like system designers, economy designers, UX designers, who fall under the game design umbrella. They define what those systems should be, how they should work, and why they matter to the player. Then the developers and artists bring it to life. If the designer says, the player should feel powerful but vulnerable, the rest of the team figures out how to reflect that in enemy design, camera shake, health values, animation, and so on. When a game fails at this level, when enemies just charge at you brainlessly, missions feel like filler side quests in GTA, and the world is technically open but practically empty, that's not just bad execution, that's bad game design. No amount of patching can fix a game loop that wasn't fun in the first place. So I played the whole game and recorded it. To be fair, I didn't experience a lot of bugs myself because I was playing it safe, just doing stuff the game told me to do, and was focused only on game design. I think in the whole 8 hours of gameplay, there was just one mission that felt remotely fun. The others, well, we'll get into it. If I were to make a gameplay video on MindsEye, I'd have to cut out all the actual gameplay because it's just that boring. And that's exactly what ended up happening. At first, I thought I'd just upload my full playthrough to another channel, no edits, but I found myself constantly trimming out anything that didn't have dialogue and constantly asking myself why I'm doing this. So ridiculous. Anyway, we'll look at 6 areas of game development where game design is crucial and see what they did and what we can learn from them. So you start off in the desert, guns out, fighting robots. Setting aside that this doesn't make any sense story-wise to put a new security recruit in this position, the robots barely move. They shoot randomly. They don't flank. They don't take cover. They don't react. You could stand still and pick them off one by one. There's no pressure, no tension, just a stiff shooting gallery with enemies that feel like cardboard cutouts. And the worst part, that exact same enemy behavior, that mindless, repetitive shoot then reload loop, continues throughout the entire game. The enemies in Mission 1 act the same way in the final mission. Nothing changes, nothing escalates. There's no challenge curve, no need to adapt or learn, just the same flat, lifeless combat again and again. From a game design perspective, this is a total failure. There's no player agency, the game tells you where to go, who to shoot, and how to do it. You're not making choices, you're just following orders. There's no sense of growth. Good games evolve. They introduce new enemy types, new strategies, and new situations. MindsEye doesn't. It plateaus immediately and stays there until the credits roll. And most importantly, it's not fun. Combat is supposed to be one of the main attractions in an action game, but here, it feels like busy work. It's not thrilling, it's not satisfying, it's just there, and takes ages. I couldn't believe that cutscenes were more interesting than the actual gameplay. Listen, while making this video, I tried so hard not to get into the most cringeworthy aspect of the game, which is the story and characters. But if you want a video on how to destroy your game with plot holes, let me know in the comments. So let's learn about some key concepts of game design when it comes to AI interactions. Can we take away something from this? Good AI design isn't about making enemies super smart. It's about making them feel believable and engaging. It's about giving the player a sense that they're being challenged, outmaneuvered, or at least acknowledged as a threat. Here are a few core principles that should have been at play. Readability. The player needs to understand what the enemy is doing and why. If an enemy is flanking, charging, or taking cover, that should be clear. In MindsEye, the AI just wander into your bullets without purpose. No telegraphs and no strategy. Variation. Not all enemies should act the same. A basic grunt might rush you, but a sniper hangs back and a heavy unit forces you to reposition. This variety creates tension and decision-making. Responsiveness. Enemies should react to the player's actions. If you throw a grenade, they scatter. If you get aggressive, they pull back, and not just soak bullets until they fall over. And finally, progression. Combat should evolve. New threats, smarter enemies, different patterns. That's how games stay engaging, and you can't just repeat the exact same behavior over and over again. So when you wonder why the combat in MindsEye feels so lifeless, it's not just because the robots or AI or whatever are boring. It is because the design behind them is non-existent. Even if the visuals look good or the story tries its best, when the enemies don't feel alive, the game doesn't either. MindsEye presents itself as an open-world experience. You're dropped into a city with roads, cars, and pedestrians. On the surface, it looks like freedom, a chance to explore, to get lost, to carve your own path. But it doesn't take long before you realize it's all just a set piece. The world isn't interactive. The city doesn't respond to your presence in any meaningful way. There are no dynamic events, no emergent systems, no side content that makes the world feel alive. It's just there, a static backdrop between missions. And that's not what an open world game should be. A true open world invites you to play with it, test it, bend its rules, and find surprises. MindsEye offers none of that. It gives you the shape of a world, but none of the substance. It's not a playground, it's a museum display you're not allowed to touch. Yes, I know they put out a roadmap with the open world as a thing coming, but this is another video altogether. Why not advertise this game as early access? The reception would have been different, but anyway. The takeaway here is that when designing a game, if an area or menu or anything can't be experienced, simply don't add it or make it obvious that a boundary exists. Don't add content for the sake of content if it doesn't provide an experience. The missions in MindsEye follow a formula, and not a good one. You drive to a marker, you watch a cutscene, you shoot a group of enemies, sometimes for 10 minutes, then you drive again. That's it. And the game repeats this loop for hours. There's no mission variety, no unique challenges, no meaningful decision-making. You're not experimenting with tactics or learning new mechanics, you're just being shuffled from one dull encounter to the next. It doesn't matter where the mission takes place, they all feel the same. And the feeling you get? You can't wait for it to be over so you can drive to the next cutscene. And when a game doesn't give the player anything new to do, it loses momentum. You're not moving toward anything, you're just stuck in a holding pattern, hoping the next mission might be different. But it never is. The lesson here is a bit more nuanced. This experience is related to the main gameplay loop. This loop should not have gotten out of the prototyping stage. Find out if the thing the player does is fun first, then add the game around it. I made a video that touches this topic, so if you're interested, the link is in the description. At the core of every good game is a loop. A set of actions that are satisfying to perform over and over. In a shooter, that might be moving, aiming, shooting, reloading, taking cover, and pushing forward. In MindsEye, that loop is a straight line off a cliff, and the only thing looping is your own regret that you purchased it. Combat feels weightless, weapons lack impact, enemies barely react to being hit, movement is stiff and unsatisfying, driving doesn't feel responsive, nothing you do feels good. You press buttons and the game responds, technically, but not in a way that's rewarding or tactile. There's no punch, no feedback, no flow. You can have all the cutscenes and cool ideas in the world, but if the actual moment-to-moment gameplay feels flat, none of it matters. That's the backbone of your game. MindsEye is a perfect example of a game where the loop was treated like an afterthought. It checks the boxes, there's shooting, there's driving, there's movement, but it never refines any of it. That's the first big lesson. Every mechanic in your core loop needs to feel good on its own. Shooting needs impact, movement needs flow, driving needs feedback. If the player doesn't feel connected to their actions, they'll disconnect from the game entirely. And second, that loop needs to evolve. You can't just give the player a toy and expect them to stay entertained for hours. You have to remix it, challenge them with it, give them reasons to learn and adapt. Repetition isn't the problem, unchanging repetition is. In short, a game's loop is like its chorus. If it's catchy, players will stick around. If it's flat and forgettable, they'll hit skip faster than you did on the ad that started on this video. Pacing isn't just about how long a mission lasts or how often a cutscene plays. It's about the emotional rhythm of the game, the highs and lows, the tension and release. Great pacing feels like music. It builds anticipation, delivers impact, and then lets the player breathe. Bad pacing feels like static, always on, always flat, never changing. MindsEye is what happens when pacing isn't designed, it's just arranged. Long cinematic sequences are slammed next to shallow gameplay segments with no sense of flow. You're either sitting too long or thrown into action. That doesn't matter. And that kind of stop and start rhythm kills immersion. Here's the key lesson. Every moment in a game should serve a purpose, not just narratively, but mechanically and emotionally. If a cutscene doesn't build tension or move the story forward, it drags. If a combat section doesn't raise stakes or teach something new, it's just noise. A well-paced game constantly shifts gears, not randomly, but with intention. Think about how God of War or The Last of Us alternate between intensity, quiet reflection, exploration, and emotional beats. It's not just variety, it's structure. And here's the other critical point. Gameplay and story have to flow together, not fight for screen time. When you treat gameplay like filler between cutscenes, like MindsEye does, you're telling the player the real experience is watching, not playing. And if watching is more engaging than playing, well, you've made a movie, not a game. Progression is one of the most powerful tools a game designer has, not just to keep players engaged, but to make them feel something. And no, it's not just about unlocking new guns or watching numbers go up. It's about creating a sense of growth, a sense that you're changing, that your choices matter, and that your skills are evolving. MindsEye completely misses that point. There's no mechanical progression, no scaling tension, no meaningful evolution in how the game plays from start to finish. And when nothing changes, nothing matters. So what's the lesson here? First, progression needs to be visible, impactful, and earned. Whether you're unlocking abilities, gaining power, or just learning to master the systems, the game should respond to your growth. If you're doing the same thing the same way across the entire experience, the game has no arc, it's just a flat line. Second, stakes come from risk and reward. Players need to feel like their time and choices have weight. If there's no challenge, no escalation, and no failure state, then victory means nothing. And when victory means nothing, the game stops being compelling. Good games build pressure over time. They force you to adapt. They give you new tools and then ask you to use them under tougher conditions. That's where satisfaction comes from. Not just from beating something, but from knowing you got better, you adapted, you changed. So here's the golden rule. A game without progression is a game without purpose. You're not moving forward, you're just walking in place. And eventually, every player stops walking. So let's be clear, MindsEye didn't fail because it was buggy. Sure, it launched with stutters, weird glitches, and enough performance issues to get it refunded on PS5, but those were just the symptoms. The real problem, the one no patch can fix, is that the game was broken at its core. It failed in the design. The enemy AI was brain dead, the open world was fake, the missions were repetitive, the combat had no impact, the pacing was off, and there was no sense of progression or purpose. It wasn't just bad execution, it was bad direction. And that's the lesson here. Visuals can impress, trailers can sell, but if your gameplay isn't solid underneath, players will see through it fast. Game design isn't just a department, it's the skeleton holding the entire experience together. If that structure is weak, everything else falls apart. MindsEye had ambition, it had a big name behind it, it had a cinematic pitch and a next-gen engine. But it forgot the basics, the fundamentals, the player, and that's why it flopped. Just a quick note before we wrap up. We've got a growing Discord community, and I'd love to have you be a part of it. Also, I launched my Steam game last week, and it's been amazing seeing people play it, share feedback, and help shape it further. If you're curious about either, the links are in the description.